So welcome to day 2 of Birthing a Brand. Today we're going to talk about that all-important naming the baby. You know, what the heck do you name your project? So I'm Kathy Sipple, and I guess I'm the mother of this baby, this project that's going to be born. And I wanted to show you the considerations that I went through for naming my own project, and hopefully can share some tools and some tricks and some, just thinking process that would be relevant for you as well as you consider what to name your own project. So let's get into it. And just for this special event, I went ahead and made some slides for you. Lisa Harris, welcome Lisa, she's on the call today. She actually stepped up and offered to do some video editing, and I realized using the Pinterest pins was going to make it, probably a little harder for her for the video editing. So I'm trying to do her a favor, do myself a favor, and make it a little bit prettier. So anyway, these are some considerations that we kind of touched upon yesterday's chat. I mean, if you don't like, then obviously why on earth would you want to name your child, your project that? You're going to see it every day. It's going to be on your business cards. It's going to be on your website. It's going to be probably on your email, kathy@.com.org. So, obviously you need to like it. I mean, that's just kind of silly. Is the domain available? Yesterday, if there's just no derivation available of that name, because so many people are going to be searching online to find you, why go against the tide? If the domain's not available, you might want to and just settle upon something that is actually attainable. And then the third thing that, again, I touched upon yesterday is it broad enough for your vision? Are you going to be boxed in by the name? I would say, although my existing brand has been good to me, my social media coach, which I launched in just about 6 years ago in early 2009, and 219 Green Connect, which I launched a few years later, those were great. It was nice that they were distinct, but they really did box me in. My social media coach pretty much says, I am going to be a social media coach, and people don't really think of me necessarily for website design or database management or overall marketing strategy. There's just so much more that I end up really doing besides being a social media coach. But that was my name, and there were some advantages. It was really a hot thing 6 years ago. There weren't too many people named that, so it did attract people to me. And then I had the advantage that I could introduce them to other things that I did. But still, the fact remained it was pretty limiting. 219 Green Connect, for those of you outside the 219 area code, it might not be readily apparent that 219 refers to an area code. I thought that was kind of a handy shorthand way to denote the service area that I basically wanted to cover by promoting events and green news going on in the 219 area code, which kind of is Northwest Indiana. Northwest Indiana is just a little clunky. If you put NWI out there, some people use that. Again, it was pretty good, but just as recently as yesterday, I was talking to Lisa Harris in South Bend, and I want to interview her for my podcast, and she's in the 574 area code. That it just seems kind of artificially, again, like this box that I painted myself into. So I've kind of learned the hard way about, how being specific can help you with your niche and maybe get you Google traffic, but if it doesn't ultimately work with you so that you can breathe and stretch beyond and do what you want to do, you might find some of those, really geographically tight or specific, skill set names a little bit, just a little bit limiting. So, I had to clear those 3 hurdles. And, next, pretty important, are people going to get it? I can like it. It might not limit me, yada, 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 but are people going to have some idea of what's going on? So, again, I didn't have all kinds of money to do market research, hardcore. So I turned to crowdsourcing, basically just tapping my friends on Facebook and polling them very unofficially, probably not statistically significant. I did take some market research classes back in college, econometrics, all these, statistical models, and this definitely is nowhere as rigorous as that. But I do think that the wisdom of the crowds can sometimes be real helpful. So this is my quote-unquote research, such as it was. I just put in my Facebook status, without searching online first, please comment, on what the word co-thrive means to you. And at the time, for some reason, I hyphenated it. I don't think I'm going to be hyphenating it. By the way, I did buy the hyphenated version of the domain as well, so just in case. And I told people, don't worry, it's not in the dictionary, it's a made-up word, so there's no right or wrong answer. I just didn't want somebody trying to look like a smarty pants and, being worried about not feeling right. Thanks in advance for your input. If you agree with an answer that's already been posted, please like it in lieu of retyping if you wish. I think I added that just because that was already happening anyway, and I figured that might be a way to get votes. Oh, okay, so what is a hyphenated version? A hyphen is just the little line, and I just want to say we have at least one person on the call, perhaps multiple people on the call, English not the first language, so hyphen is the little dash that connects, in this case, co and thrive. So that's what a hyphen is. And so if a word is hyphenated, it's just a word that contains a hyphen. So hopefully that makes sense. Thank you for the question, though. Very, very good stuff. And again, when you say, do people get it, you want to make sure that people all get it. People that, you want to attract. So sometimes, consideration of if English wasn't the first language, would you get what they mean by looking at the logo? Your logo has to kind of stand in for meaning. And I'm hoping we're going to dig deep into logo design tomorrow. We've got some new advances in that arena. So in any case, one of my very dear friends who is an author, an entrepreneur, and just interested in a lot of the same things that I am. She's also a horticulturist. She's just really kind of cool. Amanda Thompson, she has a book called Kiss My Aster, Your Guide to Designing a Custom Yard Totally Tailored to You. She's just kind of sassy. So kick-ass symbiosis, that was her definition. And I thought, well, that's a good start out of the gate. That was just, like a couple minutes after I put it out there. Another friend from college, who I haven't seen since college, said the opposite of codependent, meaning that a healthy relationship has been built, that each person is able to experience personal growth and encourages in their partner or team. What a great term. So these all got a lot of votes. Nancy Moldenauer, who was on the call 2 weeks ago, she's from Michigan City and hosts Michigan City Green Drinks, 2 or more living things and or environment in relationship for mutual benefit. So I was really kind of excited by the first couple responses. They really seemed to get it. And then just little nuances, continued to appear. Sue Erda is my publisher for the last 2 books that I have co-written and published under Powerful You Publishing. And so she said sharing in growth, development, and truly living with exponential benefits. So I just thought, yeah, you know what? I think it passes the do they get it thing. I got all really pretty positive responses. There was only one response that somebody gave me that was not positive. Let's see. Here we go. I'm going to go a little backwards here. And she didn't write it. She told me this in person. She said, I don't like the name Co-Thrive. It reminds me of co-housing or something to do with hippies. And I just had to laugh. I said, really? That's awesome. That's great. I think it must be perfect then. So I didn't mean to offend her, but that, that kind of turned her off. And for me, I had actually embraced something that a friend had told me, oh gosh, like 15 years ago or so, when she met me upon my moving to Valparaiso. She said, you're kind of like a hippie in Talbot's clothing. Like you dress really conventionally and you kind of blend among, conservatives, but you've got some, you've got some pretty out there ideas. And so I always just kind of thought that was interesting. And a few years ago, I actually updated my LinkedIn profile to include that because I just thought, you know what, I'm going to embrace that. That kind of is me. I'm not afraid to wear pearls and a blue blazer, but I am really influenced by some, more, I don't know, I think they're kind of just progressive social constructs that can really, be beneficial. So I didn't mean to offend the person who really thought she was helping me out and giving me feedback. And at the same time, she did give me important feedback, because I just thought, well, I want to be there for everybody who wants to work with me. But if they find that, kind of offensive, or don't resonate with that term because of this reason, that might actually be kind of good, because if somebody's not going to want to work with me because that's what, I'm going to be about, then, maybe that's a good way to kind of separate the wheat from the chaff. And again, I really enjoy working with everybody, so I'm not about, getting rid of anybody, but if I can't be myself and use the language that's going to resonate with me, then it's not going to work, right? And so I will tell you, as an aside, just like Roseanne experienced recent success in getting a job offer, Foy got, project work offered to her when she honed in on her LinkedIn. As soon as I put in that thing about the, hippie and Talbot's clothing, and kind of embraced more personalized language in my LinkedIn profile, like talking about environmental work, talking about sustainability, really putting my heart and soul into that LinkedIn summary, that is when I was actually approached by the publisher that I just showed you on the prior slide from Powerful You Publishing. They hired me to be the social media coach for all of their authors, and I said, yeah, not only do I want to be your social media coach, but I want to be one of your authors. So that great thing came to me because I made that change. I was also asked to be a participant on a telesummit, I think that was 2 years ago, for heart-based entrepreneurs. And I really think if I hadn't put that line in there, I wouldn't have come up in their LinkedIn search. They would have never, extended that offer to me. So don't be afraid to be a little bit different. I mean, obviously, you don't want to be offensive to everybody, but if somebody, thinks that your language doesn't really jive with them, ask if that person maybe is not your target market. Okay, if they are your target market, then you definitely want to reconsider and change that up and make sure that it's inclusive, right? Okay, so anyway, I actually think this is kind of cool that helped me really cement that I was on the right track. So Co-Thrive, where did it come from? What is the big idea behind it? Well, there are actually a whole lot of, I'm going to get into influences, but one more important thing before I go into that is, will I get into legal trouble for naming it this name? So this is kind of an important step. I would urge you, before you spend a whole lot of time and effort, to check the United States Patent and Trademark Office online database. You can check that out. Copyright and database are different. Again, I'm not an attorney. I'm not going to even pretend to give legal advice. But from what I understand, copyright is more about a creative work, protecting a creative work, either art or writing or whatever. And trademark is really about the logo or the name of a business. Okay, so again, yesterday we talked about the domain being available, and I did misspeak yesterday. I did not own cothrive.com. That had previously been trademarked, and I believe had been owned by a software company that kind of made I don't know. Evidently, the trademark is dead. I did my research, and it wasn't that it had ever been in use, but it is dead. It was available, and so knowing that, I went ahead and bought the domain, and I'm moving forward to trademark it, myself. So again, you don't want to get in legal trouble, and even beyond the legal trouble, if they didn't manage to find you, catch you, or have a problem with you using it, if somebody else is out there using that name, you're probably just going to run into confusion and some trouble. So, check that out too. Okay, and Doka is just saying she was a little afraid to put in a summary of herself on LinkedIn because that is open to the whole world, and I want it to be perfect first. And that is hard because she doesn't think of herself as a good writer. Well, something that I recommended last week when we talked about optimizing your LinkedIn profile and just optimizing your online presence was taking the baby steps, putting something out there. And so many people do want it to be perfect first, but if you wait till it's perfect, then you can miss opportunities that could have come meanwhile. So I probably have changed my LinkedIn profile, I bet, at least yearly with some little updates or other. And but I actually remember the day. It was, I believe, December of 2012. I remember where I was, and I remember hitting update profile and thinking, am I out of my mind that I'm putting out there I'm a hippie in Talbot's clothing? Like, I have been hired by banks. I have been hired by, law firms. I have been hired by, trade associations to be their keynote speaker at annual meetings. Like, are they going to hire me if I put out there that I'm a hippie in Talbot's clothing? And guess what? That business has, in fact, kind of dwindled. But I've never been happier. So I just feel like when you're being your authentic self, it's not really about perfection. It's just about stripping away what isn't you and letting the real you come forth. The other thing that you can kind of guard against for, maybe if you don't think of yourself as a good writer, or, wanting some feedback or affirmation before putting it out there, is to get a peer review. Ask somebody who knows you well, both personally and professionally, is best, to review it for you and to see if they think that you've left out anything that they consider really important to your professional success. So sometimes having a little feedback from friendly fans is really helpful, just to see yourself in a different light and get different perspective. And certainly, if you can volunteer to reciprocate and do the same thing for them, they might not even know about LinkedIn summary or how important that is. So just by you mentioning it to them and saying, hey, how about this? I know you're trying to develop more business in such and such. You're in the job search mode. Did you know there's this thing on LinkedIn? Why don't you write your profile? I'll write my profile. I see Tacey Fletcher just arrived. She updated her LinkedIn profile last week, and hoping that she's getting some good results. So we'll see if she's got any updates. So anyway, legal is definitely a great thing to check out first too. And then, this is kind of a big deal to me. Does the name honor the ancestors? Sometimes when you're naming a baby, you're like, oh, well, there's Uncle Frank, and that name's been a family name for so long, and do we want to bring this into it? And again, I don't have any kids, so this is kind of like a new thing for me. It's not like I've done this with an actual baby or child of my own, but I've certainly known plenty of people who have named children. I've been among those who wanted to say, oh, I've got a great idea. How about this name? How about this name? Sometimes they were used, sometimes they weren't. Sometimes people are open to a collaborative process. Sometimes they want to do it really strictly to honor the ancestors, and they don't care about the other things. So I just want to tell you about the models or the experiences that I was drawing from and wanted to bring those ideas forth. Number one, these people I'm going to say are CoThrive's grandparents. These are my own parents, Nancy and Joe. This was not a recent photo on the right. This was an engagement photo of theirs back in the early 60s. I think they're adorable. My mom looks, I guess, semi-hippie-ish with her little, angel or butterfly sleeves. My dad, not so much, but they're running through a field. I think they're kind of a great role model of being, people that would run through a field, but yet my dad was working for a bank at the time. So they're kind of like the yin and the yang. They've been, huge supporters in my camp for a long time. And I got this note and a check from them last week, which it's almost making me choke up a little bit. But my mom, I can tell, wrote it. Kathy, keep up your good work. The world needs you. Your fans, Dad and Mom. Ah, that's so cute. Cherish the flowers and veggies and the beautiful hours. So, they've been sitting in on my webinars. I don't believe they're here today. But I've never invited them before. I didn't think that my parents, who are in their 70s, really had all that much to do with social media coaching. I mean, they're on Facebook, but that's about it. They're not selling anything. They don't, I didn't really think of them as being a client or somebody who needed the information that I have. But because they, I feel, kind of supported this series, I'm going to give them a shout out. My dad blogs, actually. He's at joelegner.com. He blogs on WordPress. He blogs about just, family history, sometimes politics, or politics are a little different. But I think that's so cool that, he's in his 70s and he's, blogging fairly regularly about, all different kinds of topics. And then my mom is actually a, oh boy, I don't know, I'm going to have to give her a shout out tomorrow because I don't know that I can find her writers group. But she has begun doing poetry and reading her poetry in public with her writers groups, and I think that's so cool. So anyway, they're pretty neat, and I just wanted to make sure that they were on board. They actually gave me feedback via my Facebook poll as well. And so beyond who I came into the world from and honoring that lineage, there's also just been my experiences in the world. So co-working, this was at my own office space 3 years ago when I had a real, brick and mortar office. The space itself, the building was set up such that there were individual suites that were fairly affordable, and then there were shared spaces, a large conference room that held about 12 or so, and then a small conference room that maybe held 6 or 8. And so just as a tenant of the building, you could reserve the conference room space and use it for whatever you wanted. Meeting for clients, meeting for, in my case, co-working. So I invited some local coaches that I have been friends and colleagues with over the years. Teresa Valade, some of you may recognize if you're local to Northwest Indiana. She has a company, Success Trek. That's me. This is my friend Dr. Ursula Saki. She has a market research company in Crown Point, Indiana. Larry Galler has been writing for the Post-Tribune for, oh, I'm sorry, Larry, I think Northwest Indiana Times, not the Post-Tribune. He's been writing a business column, and he's a business coach. He's been doing that for a long time. And then Keela Parkinson, she's in Crown Point. She's a communications coach. There were some others that made it into the rounds periodically too. But I would just kind of set up shop. I would do an open invitation and say, hey, on such and such day, I am going to host co-working starting from, let's say 9 a.m. through 2 p.m. We'll do a working lunch, and here's how it'll be structured. We get there, we say what we're going to work on, we write our goals up on a whiteboard, and we take breaks, we check in, we just kind of compare progress. And over our working lunch, we celebrate success. We talk about what we got done. If somebody wrote a blog post or they tweeted, we gave each other support. We'd say, oh, let me go in and share that post right now, or let me go in and like that tweet, or share that event that you just created on Facebook. So it's just really cool because each of us worked on our own, more or less in a silo for most of the day. Teresa, I believe, has more staff, but for the most part, we were working on our own, and we just didn't have that kind of marketing support from one another. So to have somebody available to review your blog post, give you feedback, you could even use that time for updating your LinkedIn, whatever it was that you decided was important. There were so many great things that came out of co-working. The accountability, the sharing of success, and just learning, in ways that really I couldn't have anticipated from week to week. So co is what I take away from that, and thriving through working together. That was definitely an element that I wanted to bring into my name. Okay, let's see. What else? Okay, a little bit different direction. Deb Landry, I think this is where I first met you. She's on the call today. She no longer lives in Northwest Indiana. She's now down in Georgia. But in the summer of 2011, was the marketing person for a company in downtown Valparaiso called Our Trail Collective Edge. And the idea was for it to be kind of a gallery, a place of learning, public arts events, and there would be shows for local artists periodically, where I think it was each month a different artist was featured and their work was lined up in the relatively small gallery. This is kind of neat too. I didn't even notice this on the picture before. I see a vertical garden in this window that I believe Foy Spicer set up. So her husband was an artist who exhibited at this gallery, and I think she was my connection who introduced me and probably helped get me that job. So that's just great. I announced before we started the workshop that Foy got an offer of employment down where she lives now in North Manchester, Indiana, based on updates to her LinkedIn profile. And just seeing her in this picture through her vertical garden, kind of cool. So anyway, this place is no longer with us, unfortunately. They did close some time ago, but I love the idea of it. And what I experienced was that, creativity is great. Trying to do a lot of things in a relatively small space is ambitious, but maybe a little bit confusing sometimes. And, just having a brick and mortar space, you're going to be limited by how much stuff you can jam in there. But I've always had that idea where I really want to help artists. And that was one thing I saw, is that artists that exhibited there were so talented, like Deb, like so many others that I met, and just often maybe didn't have the marketing skills. So that's why I've got a really strong art component in CoThrive as well. Okay, might have to go. I'm going to have to go back to Pinterest. I didn't get all my slides done, evidently. Okay, so let's go to Pinterest. Again, I've been using Pinterest as kind of a place where I can gather ideas, and in lieu of slides. I did get into some slides, but community gardening. Okay, so co-community, I think that probably shares some kind of Latin root. I used to live in a house that was on 5 acres. When we moved from Valparaiso from Chicago, we had a lot of land, and we moved from a high-rise in the Loop, in the West Loop of Chicago, onto a property that, it was like a pretty big house, 5 acres, and I was just like, woohoo, I cannot wait to garden. Well, we had a 30 by 40 garden, thereabouts, 1,200 square feet. Is that right? 30? Yeah. No. Yeah, I think that's right. Okay. And it was great. We did grow a lot of food, but we also had a lot of weeds. It was a lot of work. And we were doing it all alone, so we were kind of city slickers learning, and we did okay. When the housing crisis was kind of hitting back in, what was that, 2007, we kind of, I guess that was a little in advance of the housing crisis, we kind of downsized proactively and went into something completely different. We went into a rental home for several years in downtown Valparaiso. It was a postage stamp lot, shady, and I really craved gardening, and that was so sad for me because I had considered myself quite the food producer, and all of a sudden just didn't see how to get it done. So when a community garden opened up just a few miles up the road from me, I jumped on it. I got a 12 by 12 plot, and some of the advantages that I got out of gardening in community, again, I could not have really imagined. I just thought, oh, I only got 12 by 12. I was used to having 30 by 40. That stinks, But what I found is that when you only have a certain amount of space, you really learn how to maximize it. So I learned how to do square foot gardening. I learned how to do vertical gardening, how to grow things up. And the best thing that I learned was I learned from my fellow gardeners. Shown here is John Irvin. He's a local naturalist and horticulturist that I've interviewed several times on my podcast for 219 Green Connect. Judy Allen, she's a food swapper friend of mine. She's been a client and also an avid worm composter. And then Kate Flannery, she has spoken at Green Drink several times on climate change, on GMOs, and she also owns a vertical farm. Haven't talked to her in a while, but she owns a vertical farm up in, I believe, St. Joe, Michigan now. So, really just bringing totally different experiences to the event that I held. It was a community garden festival, and people shared the fruits of their harvest. We made stuff that was all local. But getting back to what I learned from others, When you garden in your backyard, you might think, well, tomatoes didn't do well this year, or the zucchini didn't, produce as well as last year, and you only have your own garden to compare it to. But when you're gardening in a group with 40 gardeners, it becomes pretty obvious that, hey, this person's doing something different with their tomatoes because it's working. Theirs are going gangbusters and mine aren't. So in a way, it was like a little bit of competitive gardening, but I mean that in the nicest possible way. It was really a pretty neat thing because you could talk to them, being side to side with them. You could really learn from one another. And so Doka has asked me food swapper, ? So I'm going to get to that one next. Yes, food swapping. This has like become a passion of mine here in recent years. Let me see if I can find. Okay, so this was also a podcast that I did. You can check out food swapping and where it might be available to you at, I believe, foodswapnetwork.com. I think that's their overarching thing. But a food swap is an event where no money is exchanged. Participants sign up in advance, and you get a ticket because it is a place, generally that happens indoors. This one we happened to do in a park because it was nice weather in the fall. I believe this was like October 2 years ago. And the idea is you bring items that you have either grown, baked, made, let's see what else, foraged. It just can't be store-bought. You don't go to the grocery store, buy a bunch of something and bring it. Okay, so it can be canned, it can be just made that day. And what I happened to have brought was I had a ton of mini gourds. I planted them either by accident or when I composted, somehow the seeds just went crazy. I had more gourds than I knew what to do with. I had celery. The celery was all coming in at once, and I knew that it would go bad. This was salsa that I had made, and honestly, it was just kind of a little sweet for my liking. I followed the recommended amount of sugar, and to me, it just tasted sweet. I had too many canned green tomatoes. We just weren't eating canned green tomatoes. So again, if you only have your own house and your own pantry, you're kind of stuck with it, right? But when you go to a food swap, what you do is you bring those items and you put out bid lists. You tell people, hey, this is what I've brought. What have you brought that you would like to trade with me? So this is what I brought. All items, frankly, that I wouldn't have been sad not to go home with just because I had too much or, didn't particularly like what I made. This is what I left with that same day. I left with 2 dozen farm fresh eggs. I got an entire half bushel of locally grown pears. I got a loaf of bread. I got some plum sauce. I got some salted caramels. I got a jar of apple butter, it looks like, a jar of canned tomatoes. I don't even remember what all of these were. I think dried peppers and then some fresh herbs. So basically, it's a way for you to trade what you've got with others who have too much of something else. And the way that I see this relating to CoThrive is, again, if people have too much time and not enough money, then they might be able to say, hey, let me help with some of the things that need to be done around CoThrive. And for that, I will learn, maybe how to podcast or how to edit video or how to do, whatever. How to help market events or market memberships or whatever. But there's really a place for everybody. Everyone can bring what is their expertise and what they've got more of to share. So hopefully that explains that. The other thing that I wanted to model it after was something called a makerspace. Makerspace is a little bit like co-working, but it's where you're actually making things. So the office that I moved to after the one I showed you where I hosted co-working was actually a historic building. It was part of a preservation project, and I really wanted to be a part of that. It also was the old Valpo Tech building that used to house Valparaiso Technical Institute. Their alumni went on to work at NASA and all kinds of, really pretty influential places. And at the time, they were cutting edge in technology. The building has been languishing for quite a long time, but it's just got good bones, and there's some kind of good creative energy going through there. Deb Landry, who's on the call, before she moved to Georgia, she was kind of interacting with them. And I think, Deb, if I'm not mistaken, you helped them with a basement clean-out project where they used items found in the basement to be repurposed into art, and then they had an art gallery kind of thing. So Makerspace is a neat concept if you haven't really looked into it. I probably have the least to do with that particular one, but I thought it was so interesting. And the idea there was, you could buy one 3D printer and then everyone could benefit from it. Okay, so something that you would have to invest in that might be a little bit expensive for one person to do, you could, offer to the group, and it became more affordable by sharing. All right, and there are probably all kinds of influences here. Co-working, I don't need to click on this. I already talked about co-working, but there is a thing out there called Co-working Wiki. It's not just a thing that Kathy Sipple decided to do. It's a thing. It's happening because so many people are working in silos. So the last one I'll name is co-housing. Co-housing, if you haven't heard of it, you can learn more about it on cohousing.org. But basically, it's not a commune. It's like condominium-style ownership with, again, a lot of common shared advantages or commonly shared assets that people, sometimes it's called an intentional community. It's big in Denmark. Unfortunately, it's not that really big here. Doka, I'm wondering if in Belgium, did you guys have co-housing? I think it is much more prevalent in Europe. But it's a lot more interactive. It's a planned community where people, share meals. Obviously, this is going to be an online community. CoThrive. I would love to do something in real life, but that's just not going to happen right now. But celebrating. I told you a little bit about celebrating the success. Excuse me, that we had in co-working. Co-housing is more about like where people live, not necessarily where they work. But bringing people together can make it easier to share resources, kind of like a makerspace. People's skills are shared and valued as well. You can always find someone to help in a chore or do something you cannot. Okay, this has been happening for me, frankly. I cannot design a logo. I started to pay somebody to do a logo, and I was getting relatively good results, and then my friend Scott Mason, who's on this call today, saw what I was doing online. He stepped up and said, hey, you know what, here's a place that I can help you. I gave him some marketing advice for how he could market his band. He's in a, gosh, how many people are in your band, Scott? Is it like 18 or 20, something like that? It's like a huge, I can't think of the name, but they play really, really kind of big events. Scott, you can help me out in the chat area. I cannot think of what that kind of band is called. But anyway, gave him some tips of how he might use YouTube, things like that. And we can get things done, kind of like food swapping, we're skill swapping. Okay, so it's just kind of nice because you learn from one another, it's friendly. And again, I had never thought of inviting my parents to anything that I do. Okay, so Scott says he's in the Jackson Park Jazz Orchestra. It's up in Milwaukee. So I don't know if anybody on the call is in the Milwaukee area, but hopefully soon you'll be able to Google them and see lots of their videos on YouTube. So we talked about some kind of cool ideas the other day. But adults can learn from kids. We had a couple, what was that, just last week, Charlotte, your webmaster was on, Zach, and he's 16 years old. He's an Eagle Scout, so he is doing a website for Charlotte. My parents were on multiple times. They're in their 70s. They're learning how to do things that they didn't think they would learn how to do. It doesn't mean nobody have their own project or nobody have their own, website, but it's just you have your own space, and then you can come to this space to kind of learn and share. All right. So anyway, there's some elements that make sense. Some of them don't. Some really apply more to real life. But, what does it look like? There's a common house. So I kind of really see CoThrive as being an intentional online community where people can come to share their work, get support, trade skills, and, get input. and because I believe social media is a pretty big part of what's happening these days, that'll remain, as a core benefit that members will get is my own, my own coaching and expertise. But certainly I don't want it to be the Kathy show. I want it to expand way beyond just what I do. Okay, so anyway, some of these things really have more to do with a brick and mortar place. So let me just pause for some questions here that I see or comments. Okay, Doka says, I know of that in a big student city, Ghent. Okay, cool. So Doka is from Belgium. She not too long ago spoke at the Valparaiso International Center and did a talk that I understand was wildly popular on Belgium, her home country. So she's now here in Northwest Indiana. Charlotte says she has friends working on co-housing in South Bend and Elkhart. Great, I would love to know about that. The Elkhart house is called the Prairie Wolf Cooperative. Charlotte Wolf, do you have anything to do with that name? I know it's not spelled the same way, but that's interesting. And Charlotte says there's a workshop series going on with the group in Elkhart, and they did a crowdfunding effort to help fund it by offering workshops to donors. Great. Well, guess what, Charlotte? That's more or less the same thing that I'm doing right now. Whether you're aware of that or not, I've been using kind of a crowdfunding strategy to find out, hey, does this resonate with you? Is this benefit of interest, for you? And I'm trying to kind of design the programs that people who keep showing up on these workshops tell me are of interest. And, I've got other ones in the hopper based on feedback that I've gotten. So that is one advantage I see with doing something online, is that you can really react to the crowd in a way that is a little different, frankly, than what we'd be doing if we had to build a brick and mortar co-housing thing. That obviously takes quite a bit more money. But so that's where I am right now. We're going to be talking mostly about the logo tomorrow. I did get some feedback, or actually, Scott, I got my next round of revisions back from the other place I've been having work on the logo. And I know you're working on some logo revisions too. So I don't want to make this competition. We're just kind of going to put all the ideas in the hopper, and I'd really love to get your take on, basically, since today was about what to name the baby, tomorrow is almost like what color to paint the nursery, or, what's this baby going to look like, right? Let me see, Lee, I missed a comment from you. Lee said, Life Success wants to help people have adventures to expand their life view. Will this fit in somehow? Right now, we are mainly offering sailing adventures, but we plan to expand. I think so. I think, this is what I'm looking for, is people to co-create. Oh, that, what, that's the big one that I forgot about, was co-creation. Let me just go here for a second. I think I might have mentioned briefly that I was really proud to be notified last summer that my work was going to receive a Golden Innovator Award from a group called Conscious Evolutionary Chicagoland. So, by the way, I did add this event. Let me just, as an aside, go quickly to CoThrive.org. It is actually functioning now. Yesterday it was cothrive.nationbuilder.com, and now my own real domain works. I'm not completely crazy about the color scheme. This is one of the logos that Scott designed for me. I don't think we've settled on that quite yet, but it's getting there. It's getting there. So just yesterday, Christine Neal, who I believe is on today's call, added some events. You can add your own events as a member of the public, and so if you guys have something that you're doing that you think fits with, what I'm talking here about CoThrive. Doka, I know that you do some health-oriented things, and I think that would fit right in. I know there's some people on here that really want to get healthier. Christine runs a group called Fabulous Over 50 Women Connect, and she keeps asking me to be a part of it, and I'm a little ways away from being 50, so I haven't joined yet. But I'm with her in spirit, and I think she's doing great things. So I am just tickled to see other events here that people are posting. This is really very cool. Deb Landry says, I co-create every day. My website, Engaging Arts, is coming along. Absolutely, Deb. So if you have an online event or you have, an in-person event, hopefully I want this to cover, not just regionally, but I want this to be national or even international. Okay, there's really no reason, because it's going to be online, that we can't have people everywhere. Okay, so but I did add this event, kind of put in a plug for myself here, but I know I'm going to be receiving the Media Award at this Golden Innovator event in May in Chicago at the Bodhi Spiritual Center. So I would love it. It is, a little bit expensive. It's certainly not free, but early bird registration makes it a little bit more affordable if anybody has the wherewithal or the interest to come there. Barbara Marks Hubbard is going to be presenting the award. She is incredible. She is 82, 83. No, you know what? She's 85, and she is just absolutely amazing. She has just done so much in her day. She actually was nominated for the vice presidential, what do you call it, as a delegate, is that the right word, back in the 80s? It was whenever Geraldine Ferraro got on the ticket. She was also nominated for candidacy in that year, and she spoke at the she spoke to the delegates. So I mean, she's just done all kinds of things. She knows, she has been friends with Buckminster Fuller. She's been, I mean, anybody that you can think of that's made like big change in the last 85 years, she's been there. She's known, Dwight Eisenhower was a personal friend of her family. She's just known so many people. So anyway, she's incredible, and she's just a ball of energy. At 85, she is just going strong. So you can, tickets are not free, unfortunately. I'm not collecting money for the tickets, so that's a little wonky. I've got to work this out with them. But anyway, you can add your own events, whether you charge or not, whether you're the host or not. If it's just an event you think people would care about, go ahead and put it up there. What I wanted to talk about, though, was when I got this nomination, I didn't know anything about this group. I found out that Linda Rosenthal, whose name also came up yesterday, was the one who nominated me. And she just said, well, I'd come to a couple of your workshops, and I thought you were kind of a mover and a shaker, and I just saw what you were doing. And I was flattered, but when I looked at the previous people who had won, I thought, man, I got to step up my game to feel good about receiving this award. And this is kind of one of the things that moved me into, the space of awareness that Co-Thrive had to happen. I just love the Conscious Evolutionary Chicagoland logo, though. I think this is another example of, co-creating is kind of their thing. They look at all the different sectors that are out there in the world, health, infrastructure, justice, media, relations, science, spirituality, arts, economics, education, environment, governance, and I can't remember if I said health or not, but health. And, many times when we're in our own little silo, we're here like this little guy facing outward into the world. And we've got our language of science, or we've got our language of justice, or our language of environment. And sometimes it can be a little bit, tempting, or it's just the way that things happen, that we surround ourselves with people that are maybe a little too like-minded, and we never really get to cross the aisle, or we never get to go into these other sectors. So what they do, I'm really paraphrasing here, is invite people to come into a common hub where, we explore the areas where we're more alike than different, and then invite people to venture outward into other sectors and learn from one another. So again, they've been doing events that I think have been super cool, really interesting. Every time I've gone to one, which has only been a couple of times so far, it has been amazing. I've met amazing people, and people that are just making big change in the world. But I kind of miss it because I can't be with them every day. So Co-Thrive is a way for me to reach out and build a space where I can invite artists to come and co-create every day. Tell us about your co-creation strategy. Tell us what's going on in your sector. So right now what I'm trying to do is basically, recruit people to be leaders in each of these different sectors that can help me influence the content of the site that you think will be best best adapted or will best serve your tribe. And basically I want members of all of these different sectors to be represented. I know people in most of the sectors already, but there are people that are going to be more open and expansive and just asking the question like Lee just did, like, here's what I'm doing, how does that fit in? I don't even know the answer to that yet, but I would love to have a workshop session where we say, instead of this being about Kathy, oh, Kathy Harris just arrived and this is such great timing because she is the artist who actually designed this logo, and I'm talking about her as she came in. Kathy, do you have a mic yet, or can you hear me? If you are able to, if you wouldn't mind me putting you on the spot, we did not talk about this at all. I was just kind of describing the process of co-creation. I'm going to take a shot and see if I can unmic you. Hey, Kathy Hare, did you hear me talking about you? Kathy, do you have sound? Okay, I totally surprised Kathy, so this might not work today. Kathy, let me know if you're in a position where you're able to talk. I was just putting your logo that you designed for CEC on screen and describing the process of co-creation, and I thought if you were in a position to say a few words, I'd just love to hear from you and you be able to talk about your beautiful work. Okay, looks like maybe she does not have a mic, so that's too bad, but we'll do that another time. Actually, Kathy and I don't have this completely worked out yet, but I think next week we're going to be doing a webinar series where we build a different website every day on different platforms, and she is an artist, so she will be talking about building websites from her perspective. I'm going to be kind of looking at it through the lens of social media and marketing, but that should be really kind of fun. So we'll be putting out invites for that too. All right, so does anybody else want to say anything? I've got just a few other housekeeping things, but I actually, Chatty Cathy, finished early for a change. This is unheard of. Let me just go here for a second. I do want to invite you to help me engage with the site, kind of practice on it. You can join with email. If you go to cothrive.org, you can join and just sign up. You can join at the free level. If you know that you want to become a member, you can go on over to donate, and there are some ways that you can either, I think this needs some clarity, frankly. It still needs work. Again, this is a soft launch. I told you yesterday that have some context. This is not the public launch, so it's not all perfect, but I'm working out the bugs, and it will be reasonably more ready. Oh dear, I just saw a typo. That's not good. Available. I know how to spell available. Got to fix that. Okay, but it has been, I think, a little confusing for some to know what is CoThrive, how are we going to talk to each other. Forums will be coming soon so that we can get the people in different sectors, being able to talk to one another. Yes, Charlotte, I'm sure it's cothrive.org. If I type in cothrive.org, let me just show you what happens. I type it in, and it does a redirect to cothrive.nationbuilder.com. So it's the same thing. If anybody else is having trouble getting there, let me know, but I just typed it in and I was able to get there, so it should work. But again, I would love for everybody on this call to become a member, even if it's just a free member. If you want to volunteer, there's some different ways that you can get involved. I would love for people to contribute their writing. So I was talking to Lisa Harris yesterday. She's a writer, and sometimes, I mean, she's already writing on a number of different platforms, but sometimes writing on a different blog platform can actually build traffic for you, build awareness, among this audience to bring it back to your home space. Okay, so again, it's not my intention that everybody come to this makerspace, play in this playground, and never do your own thing, but it's kind of a place where you can come, learn from others, come to these free workshops, with the paying members, I'm actually going to be taking more requests. I love it. Lisa Harris last week said, "You're kind of like the DJ. You're spinning requests from your listening audience," and it's true. I am. With social media and with this platform, we can really create whatever training is needed. Whatever is valuable. And also, a key volunteer thing that you could do would be if you have an expertise or if you have an idea that you'd like to, host a webinar series with me, maybe Deb Landry for creativity, or, Lee Watson talking about life success and helping people have adventures. Could that be adapted to something online? I think it could. Lisa Harris yesterday, we were talking about how she she's a chef, but she's not really chefing a lot right now. She's more writing. But we talked about maybe a video series for her, going out foraging, making a video, and cooking, and things like that. So I just see unlimited ideas, and I've got plenty of ideas. I've got plenty of creative partners on this call. And what I need to know from you is just, is there something that you're itching to do? If so, if you can hit the volunteer button, and let me know if one of the things that is there resonates with you. If it doesn't, tell me what you have in mind. I talked to Christine Neal yesterday about, she's got a huge network, I think 10,000 or so on her list. Talked to her about maybe being an affiliate. So what that means is if she were to recruit people who come and become members, then I'm actually willing to compensate her for that. And that offer would be true for anybody on this call. I'll be revealing more about the affiliate program toward the end of the week. So anyway, these are the things going on, and hopefully I haven't lost you, the hippie in Talbot's clothing. It might be a little out there, but we're going to talk about the logo tomorrow. I think Scott has done a nice job. I've asked him to just change it up a little bit. I'm not going to get into the critique of that just now. We'll be going into that in depth tomorrow. But artists, anybody with graphic design sensibility, and anybody who just likes to crowdsource a logo or find out how a logo is created, I think you'll enjoy tomorrow's talk. Christine has asked, can you add blogs with this platform as well? You certainly can. I've got a blog feature going here. I don't have an awful lot, but I would love to have other people doing guest posts. That would be great. And one other thing I want to mention is on Calendar. This is not perfect. Yeah, Deb just said my CoThrive needs help in Google search. The reason it's not even in Google search is I just hooked up the domain yesterday. This is a soft launch this week, so I kind of said I'm not rolling this out to the world yet. You guys are my trial audience. I know that the site still has some typos, it still has some bugs. Christine was nice enough to help me identify some things yesterday. So it's not quite ready for Google. You guys are kind of like the godparents, you're the birthing team. Yeah, I don't think you were there yesterday, so you might not have put that together. I get it. But anyway, soon I'm going to have a better feature for you to find out about events, but right now the best way, if you want to share about events that are happening, Facebook is still going to be the best way for this week. So if you want to invite somebody to come to today's thing, you can always know that you can go to cothrive.org, you can go to Calendar, and this will be updated with what is the best way to get there. And if you want to subscribe to the YouTube channel where you can see past workshops that I have uploaded to video, I'll be continuing to do that. You hit subscribe, it will ask you to subscribe to the video channel, and in that way you're going to be getting updates when new content is available. All right, so I know we're almost out of time for today. I hope that's been kind of interesting. Again, we were talking mostly today about naming the baby, how we kind of got the name for CoThrive, and what were the influences that went into it. So tomorrow we're going to be talking about the logo and the what it's going to look like. All right, so it's gotten a few pieces together, but it still needs your input, frankly, and there's time for you to help shape what CoThrive is going to look like, and I hope you can be here tomorrow to help me do that. I think we're going to have a lot of fun. So thanks again for being here, and you can look for this video later today on YouTube.